I say welcome to the queendom. It's a holy sanctuary. Make a blessing on my body, cause I find it necessary. I free my femininity. I'll let my body move while I got Shakti raining over me. The gave birth to all this energy, and in between my thighs I have the universe inside of me. A queendom. I say welcome to the queendom. And in my queendom, all my walls are made of mirrors. So if you can't see yourself, let your reflection make it clearer. In the queendom, women praising other women, and we're loving on each other like the way we should be living. In the queendom, we don't compare and shame or jealousy. We're busy celebrating the way God created you and me. The queendom, if you feel the call to freedom, you got the keys to claim your crown. And welcome to the queendom. It's a holy sanctuary. Make a blessing on my body, cause I find it necessary. And I free my femininity. I'll let my body move while I got Shakti raining over me. Gave birth to all this energy, and in between my thighs I have a universe inside of me. I say welcome to the queendom. And in my queendom, we are reclaiming what is ours. We can start a revolution when we learn to own our power. In the queendom, it's time to stop pretending, people pleasing, playing weaker, cause your power is transcendent. In the queendom, I let God be my direction. When I pray, I'm making love to you. Trust you are my protection. In the queendom, I'm living with an open heart, because the queen knows how to feel the world and turn it into art. Welcome to the queendom. It's a holy sanctuary. Make a blessing on my body, cause I find it necessary. I free my femininity. I'll let my body move while I got Shakti raining over me. Give birth to all this energy, and in between my thighs I have a universe inside of me. I say welcome to the queendom. And in my queendom, it's a holy sanctuary. Make a blessing on my body, cause I find it necessary. In the queendom, I'll free my femininity. I'll let my body move while I got Shakti raining over me. The queendom gave birth to all this energy. In between my thighs I have a universe inside of me. A queendom. I say welcome to the queendom. Yeah, you probably don't have good stuff.
Hello, ladies. Happy Wednesday. Happy Women's Council. Happy to be back with y'all, following up from last week's very potent opening. We have a smaller group so far this week, but that is great. We can perhaps get some more time. We'll see who else hops in. However, I do have that a commitment to actually keeping the container closed. So I'm going to go over those again. And actually, yeah, I'm going to close the container so that we can follow the protocols as they are. Can y'all see this? Cool. Yeah, so just a review, I think most of us were, not everybody was here last week. So I'm going to just go over every week anyways. I'm going to go over the approach that we're taking with this Women's Council. Just want to say greetings to those that are here this week. And it feels auspicious that we started with 22 and now here at the second step, we are 5, which is the imaginal number, the number of cells that, the butterfly becomes when it moves from the caterpillar to the butterfly. The 5 clusters of cells find each other and make a new organism. So here we are in this, imaginal number. This is what came through from our initial conversation that we had last month of how we're going to go about this council. and really like also the intention of why we're gathering, right? So I spoke last week to the fact that this world that we're living in is so deeply in need of a new paradigm, especially when it comes to our relationship with sexuality, which is inherently connected to our relationships to ourselves and to the natural world that we call home. The intention for this gathering is to acknowledge that across cultures and throughout history, humanity has wrestled with realities of violence, domination, exploitation, war, and sexual harm. While these issues appear in many forms, they often point towards deeper ruptures in our relationship with ourselves, one another, earth, and the sacred. So ultimately, this council is a council about relationship. And it's a specific dialogue that is to tend to that relationship, those relationships, and to be living in the question of what is it that we're inheriting, what are we passing on, and what kind of culture are we coming together to create, right? How are we tending to these relationships as a collective consistently over time? Because a lot of the issues that we're facing are existential dynamics that have been plaguing humanity for generations. Yet, with Inheritance Collective, which is the foundation and backbone of this gathering, we are coming together to ask, okay, what are we inheriting? What have we been given, both in the beauty of it and in the challenge? And what do we want to have be our inheritance that we pass on to our children? And just a quick note about that, I'll say this every week. This is a free and open dialogue, so there will never be a barrier to entry to attend this council. However, if you're inspired by what we bring up here in this space and you want to support and want to engage with Inheritance Collective in a more formal way, then you're definitely invited to join. I'll put the link to inheritancecollective.love in the chat. It's $22 a month. There's a whole lot of other offerings and potent conversations taking place, including one that's happening tomorrow about moving from extraction to regeneration, as well as a live podcast taping on Saturday with Aubrey Morgan Yee, who's the author of Our Beloved Futures. So lots of good things happening with Inheritance Collective in an official way, yet this particular gathering is open for everybody. And then if you do join officially, then 50% of all proceeds go to a different organization every month. So we're demonstrating the power of making measurable change as a collective and going beyond theory and philosophy into tangible, measurable, meaningful impact work. We've raised almost $3,000 for the Guatemalan Midwives Collective and building a birth center in Lago Atitlan, which is such a victory. A few things to share, just ground rules. This is not a therapy group. This is not a debate. This is not a place to convince each other of a particular ideology. I feel like the five that are here get this pretty clearly. But I do want to really put that into our culture and also express that this is live streamed. So big disclaimer is anything that you share in this first hour, and then we'll have a non-recorded, not live streamed 30 minutes of integration after this first hour, but this hour is being broadcasted live on YouTube. The idea of that being that we want to have these conversations in public. There's a lot of beauty happening behind closed doors in women's circles and in therapy, whatnot. However, we want to bring the topics that we're discussing here into a public forum. And so over time, as that grows, we look forward to having the council taking place. Meanwhile, people are tapping into the live stream and they can actually have exposure to the topics that we're covering. That being said, if you choose to share a personal story, please have discretion with how vulnerable you wish to be. And also, please don't use anyone's names in your story so that we can maintain autonomy of people that are not in the space to represent themselves. Goes a little deeper into that here. I will read you these slides in time to be a little easier to read, but consent and transparency, these are being recorded and live streamed, public facing conversation, asking that shares are limited to about 5 minutes. I feel like maybe today we could play with that, being that there's 5 of us. Maybe we keep it to 5 minutes, but we'll have an opportunity to revisit things. I notice for myself, sometimes if someone speaks for more than 5 minutes, like I'm even doing right now, probably, I can lose attention, you know? And so just to keep presence with each other, let's play with the 5 minutes and then we'll be able to repeat and comment on each other's things. Um, honoring that not everything everyone shares will maybe resonate with everybody, but practicing what we've spoken about in our governance councils about holding each other in regard and respecting perspectives that come in. And that this is a space for us to step into leadership and future building. I will be the formal facilitator, yet again, really wanting to lean into the fact that this is a circle of leaders and we're practicing the hive mind and the group consciousness, and everybody's a leader here. So thank you for bringing your leadership into the space. And with that, I want to open it up. I would like to continue on from where we left off last week. Two of the big topics that were coming through that I found very interesting and important for this time were rites of passage and initiation, which feels like it's going to be a forever theme with this council. And I'm looking forward to even getting with the men and having an all gendered dialogue about rites of passage. And then also, what was the word that carefrontation, caring confrontation, compassionate conflict resolution, even. But one of the things that really struck a chord in me was, when we're seeing things that don't feel aligned with this future world that we're wanting to create, such as my personal experience was I was at a party, a man was making comments that were completely out of line. And I, in the moment, was very uncomfortable and chose to like laugh it off instead of say something. And I feel like this is an important dialogue for us to have amongst ourselves of like, how do we, in a tactful way that calls people forward rather than just shames them and disciplines them, speak to the core of the issue. And that can look, of course, like so many different things. So there's two potential pathways for us to take today. Obviously, this is a council, so whatever other pieces y'all want to put into the pot, questions you'd like to pose to the collective, or any directions we want to go, I open it up to the wisdom of the group. I will be using a 5-minute timer and taking notes, and we'll see what we yield from today. Thanks so much again for being here, and looking forward to hearing what arrives. Be welcome for whoever wishes to start to just hop off mute and bring your voice into the circle.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Roxy, for that beautiful intro. And I don't know, something that just like sent immediately shivers down my arms was when you shared that story of when you were at a party with that man and then he made that comment. And that's something that I have experience with as well, where, that type of thing happens. And I guess a part of me is like, it knows that like, well, I don't like that, and I feel uncomfortable. But then in that uncomfortability, I'm like, okay, I want to move past it and just like brush it off and like make this moment over as soon as possible. And then so when I think about those moments after it happened, I give myself the chance to like go back into that moment in the safety of like myself. And then ask myself like what would I have done if I felt regulated and centered in myself. And I mean, now that I'm just like speaking it, nothing really comes to mind because like a fresh example for me isn't there yet. But I just wanted to, I guess, like open this up and maybe ask if you were to go back into that experience, like what, and you were feeling, comfortable and like regulated and centered and clear and like what you wanted to how you wanted to approach that. I'm curious if there's anything coming up for you in that regard.
Yeah, I love that. And same, I feel like looking back at it is always a great move. I didn't know, to be honest, until our council last week. It's been something that keeps coming up with me, and just like one image I had was being like, like super sharp and like that's not okay, however, that fierce side. But I really appreciated what came up in our conversation last week about letting them know how it made me feel. And that hit home way deeper, of being like, hey, brother, the way that you're expressing yourself right now is making me extremely uncomfortable. And I really appreciate you as a friend and an ally. And right now I'm having a hard time feeling safe with you and trusting you with me or with any other woman, to be honest. And it makes me sad and a little bit angry. And I don't want you to speak this way in front of me, please. Like bringing it into the feeling space so that there can be a potential of empathy on his side, I feel like is a really amazing tool that I can pull on easily, because it brings me into presence, which then regulates me. It's like, oh, what am I feeling? And then rather than me needing to be like the authoritarian in the room, I'm actually able to be more honestly what I am, which is like a woman having a vulnerable experience, So that's what I'm feeling is true for me. No.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because, like, you know, recently graduated, I guess not recently graduated, but just being in spaces where it's like the atmosphere is like chill and like, it's a party. And then like that kind of comment gets made. I sometimes question like when I approach it from that space, like, is this gonna land, for this person? Are they gonna like hear me? And I know sometimes that I've played with just like being the bitch and being like, that's not okay. And then just like cutting it off there and be like, don't say that. Sometimes when some like people around me, like male friends, I wouldn't really consider them to be like brothers. But just like males that are in my life through association or just happens, you know what I mean? I find that I'm a lot more comfortable just being like, that's not okay. Or like, don't say that. And then just like literally cutting it off right there, no explanation. Obviously, if they're curious and want to go deeper into that, I think that that's a beautiful opportunity. But I don't know, I guess this opens the conversation of like that some people have a hard time creating space even to receive these things. So that's also something that I'm noticing as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of the conversation too. And I think it was mentioned as well last week of, if there gets to even be a consent dynamic when approaching some of these things, like if we see someone in community doing anything, whether it's a man and it's sexual, or whether it's someone just behaving in a way that is bringing up something for us, rather than giving like unsolicited advice, being able to be like, hey, are you open to some feedback? And asking for that doorway to get opened, I think is definitely valuable. And they might not be. And then we have to be okay with that if we're going to ask permission. Then.
Ah, this is such a topic. Um, I really appreciate everything you both said so far. I can feel it in my body, that kind of the feeling you get where it's like you want to say something and it doesn't feel right, but you're almost like a little anxious. Like, and I think something that's hard for me, or I found is hard for me in conversations that are challenging in general, like these types of ones, is like I tend to feel emotion strongly. And one thing I'm working at, which my partner is amazing at, is like he can have these conversations on like touchy issues and he's very calm and he asks questions, which is something I've taken away a lot. Like he asks people questions that they have to then respond to, which I think is one really helpful, asking them questions. And also something he's good as, he maintains facts and information sometimes better than me in certain, you know, in terms of like bringing things up. But so one thing I took away is like the ability to like maintain calm, even if it's like something that's triggering or you feel a strong emotion about. I don't think we always have to stay calm in terms of like there's something that's coming up around when you're saying like, hey, you open to feedback, or like, hey, that makes me feel, it's partially way more receptive. People are way more receptive to that. And there's also this softness to it that's, I think it's hard to know sometimes when to feel into that. Maybe if it's like a closer relationship of like they care about you. So knowing how you feel and that like asking, hey, can I give feedback feels better because you're in relationship. And also there's like the sharpness of like, I'm not going to be nice and polite. That's not okay in the terms of like, depends on what it is. If it's, there's something dangerous, if you're a party, if you're defending another woman, if there's something where there's like a sharpness needed, or there's not that relationship where they're to the extreme of they're kind of be like an asshole about it, you need to just be like, this is not okay. But often I think having the conversation, being able to build relationship, I know when I'm getting feedback too, if someone like is sharp to me, I immediately spike. Even if they're right, like I'm like, my defenses are up in some way, versus being asked, can I say something? There's something that I learned is like there's a neurological or something that happens in your brain. If you ask someone, hey, can I give you feedback? Or hey, can I, they have to give you permission. So even if they don't like what you're saying, the fact that they gave you permission automatically triggers something in the brain to help them not the amygdala doesn't go off as much because they said yes. So there's something to, I think, asking that, but still allowing for, as you said, Roxy, that like sharpness. I think Mindy, you talked about it too, when it feels appropriate and it doesn't feel like the may give you feedback or that kind of relational conversation is going to go well. And the other thing that came up for me, which has come up a lot, is when it's said is like there's the number of times I've had someone say, I'm just joking. Oh my God, relax. And I've sat with it because I've gone from the sharp, like getting really pissed and like hard line. And it's come also sometimes with comedians, interestingly, which I've had a really interesting relationship with, because I think that comedians, if they can like nail the comedic aspect to intense issues well, I think it is such a powerful way to bring awareness around something, because people are laughing and they're like, oh shit, that's so accurate though. But if it's just making a joke about rape or a joke about whatever it is, and it's not done well, it's like it's building that culture of men and women, honestly. I know we're focusing on men, but like that idea of like saying something and not realizing, one, your words are spells, which I think is, I take that very seriously. I try to be very aware of it. It is a work in progress for sure, but it's something I'm working on. And also, where is it okay to be joking? Like, and I've had a lot of feedback, and I think I'm still trying to get clear on it, where I'm like, okay, you get the response, like, I'm just joking. I'm like, okay, but why is that a joke that needs to be made, in a sense? So there's something around this idea of like, one, using I'm just joking as a response to being called out, one. And then two, when it's someone who like genuinely, because I've had that happen where I know they genuinely don't feel this way about women or about whatever they're making a joke around. So I know it's not something they believe, but they're still making a joke around it. And there's a question there around, like, I know you don't actually mean that, but like, why does that feel necessary? Like, what's the purpose of that joke? So I don't know. There's something around that where that's been something that comes up a lot, where I'm like, okay, I know you're joking, but like, that's not, why are we speaking like that? Like, why is this a joke we need to be making? Just find a better joke. Anyways, that's I think I just swallowed a fly. Oh my god. I've spoken.
Yeah, I mean, that's real, and then they can be like, well, there's no why, there's no purpose. I'm just saying, I'm just making a joke, and it can go on and on. But I think that's where there's this interesting edge opportunity for us to be that reminder about the spell casting and really like the culture creating, of and being able to have the humility of like, wow, well, I'm like, I just want to share. And this is just kind of what I'm thinking on the fly here, of what I could do is to be like, well, I just want to share that joke made me super uncomfortable. And I get that you're just joking, but you're joking about things that aren't funny. And and even to be like, hey, can I just make a request that just like you do you, but in my presence, could you just not? Because it really is uncomfortable for me. And these are things I care about and I don't want to make light of because they're big deals, like in that way. It's almost like too, there's this piece, like what you were saying, because I'm the same. If someone comes with like, then I'm like gonna meet them there, But it's like if we can find wherever the soft point can be within ourselves, and then just like bring that up, and even speaking to it, like even being like, wow, this is super uncomfortable for me to say, but I'm gonna say it because I'm working on being a part of the change I wish to see. And so, I'm just gonna say, like, can you not say that around me, please? And it just I can like imagine because I've seen it like when I had a girlfriend once that was really good about not speaking about other people in the room, and like gossiping basically. And I was in a circle with her, and someone else's name came up, and there was gossip happening. And in the most elegant way, she called the circle up, but out of a personal request, and pretty much did that. Like she was just like, hey, this conversation is making me really uncomfortable. And can we change the topic? Like, this doesn't feel like a kind dialogue. And it wasn't like anybody was specifically in trouble. She kind of did make it about herself of like, this is making me uncomfortable. And it felt like in a really gentle way, everybody in the space got like called up to another level. And so I feel like that is the opportunity here, and that's obviously in a specific moment. The other piece is like if there's consistent issues over time, like if there's someone in the community that is a source of consistent problems, right? Like how does that get addressed? That's another kind of example. Megan, I'm feeling you. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. I've been like pondering a lot while you guys are talking of how I will say in my current life situation, I've put a lot of space between people who make jokes like that. Um, I've like just made like I very much relate to the feeling of like when somebody does something and I like get really, really activated and then I'm just like ready to like cut them. And with my words, like I have like a very sharp tongue. My Mars is in Gemini, and I really feel like my tongue is sharp and quick and fast in conversation. So, and being have so much Scorpio, it's just is what it is. And so I've learned that like I have to observe more and listen before I immediately kind of like come so hard. Because yes, when I do that, it doesn't always land. And a lot of times those who I'm speaking to do feel attacked. Though what I'm telling them is almost always true, and very like makes a lot of sense. Like when I was a teenager, all of the boys that I went to school with were all like this. And I was always around, I call them boys because that's exactly what they were, right? Boys and adolescent boys. And I had a hard time making girlfriends. And so I hung out with a lot of boys, but they were really gross and would say really offensive stuff. And the way that I learned to defend myself is to just immediately just be like, don't say that. Like, just don't say that. That's really like, don't not, and I guess that's what I was doing is I was like, when I'm around, don't talk about that. Like, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not going to hang out with you if we're going to talk about that. Now, I will say growing up, like, these are my observations here. I was like, I had this like really deep, and maybe this kind of is a funny rites of passage conversation too, but I had this really deep vow to myself that I was going to like save myself for something great. I don't know why. It could have been religion, but it also was just me. It felt like a control thing. Like I was in control. So when I was hanging out with all these boys and they were really, really gross and they were really, really offensive and would talk like, when they see girls walk by and they're wearing certain things or whatever, they would just say things that were just like, oh my God. I'm like, that is, like, I can't believe that just came out of your mouth. Like, would you say that? Do you think that she's ever going to want to hang out with you if you say that? Now, the funny thing is as I talk to you guys about this, I'm observing how I may have potentially been helping these boys out because I didn't know that but I was really calling them out a lot. Like, I don't think you're going to get to date that girl if you're talking about her like that. Like, I wouldn't want to date you. Like, I'm clearly not dating you because of the way you talk about girls. Like, I'm just keeping you in the friend zone all the time because you guys are really gross. And I don't even know if we're friends. Like, I'm just hanging out with you because I can't make any girlfriends and I'm really busy, like, person. That it was fine. Like, it's just funny. I'm just observing what I'm explaining as I tell you guys. It's just kind of funny. So as I've gotten older and as I'm in a lot of spaces with a lot of teenagers, I will say that, the energy I must be presenting at this moment must be bringing out. I just have a lot of really safe men around. But I will say I have some family dynamics in my like more, let's say those who have maybe been like those who have like not necessarily raised me, maybe they've raised me, but have been like my, what do we call like people who are older generation, let's say that they don't think things through before they talk, I think is where I'm going. And so I have a lot of that in my current reality and I feel like almost disrespectful sometimes because I don't, and I do the dirty old man thing a lot in my head where I'm like, he's a dirty old man. And I will give them an off. Like I do that where I'm like, well, that's just how they are, which I don't know what that's about. And I'm observing myself even in this moment of like, do I really like that? Am I okay with that? Do I want my children to grow up in a world where their mom kind of one-off dirty old men? I don't actually think I like that. Like, I actually, as I speak about this, I'm a little like, no. But I did always be okay as a kid. I think I was really taught to that's just how they are. I will say I've had a lot of people that I've loved in my life that I've cared so much about, who are not on this planet anymore. Yeah, definitely boys will be boys. And that I've respected truly, but have been dirty old men. And I think that the reason I went off it is because they're honest about it. That's probably what it is. They're just out there with it. And I'm like, am I even mad about it? I don't know. It's just kind of me like questioning all these different feelings, because there's people who are not honest about it and they say it kind of behind closed doors or they say it under their breath or in a party where you're in a space where you're like everybody's a really safe person and you feel really close to those people. And then when they say something like that, it almost hits deeper because you're like, this is my safe container where I don't believe that any of these people would talk this way or make jokes this way. But then when you kind of expect it, because they're just, a dirty old man, there's less of a, you just kind of, eh. But I don't know I don't know how I feel about that. So maybe I'm bringing up the conversation in this space of just how do you guys feel about that in regards to generational too? Oh, that kind of in my, yeah, to old dog, new tricks, 100%. I don't know how many effing times I've heard that, like in a million, in so many contexts. It's like unreal. But yeah, it's just something that in my reality is more present right now. Because I do work so much with people who are older and people who are younger generation. I tend to work in those two realms a lot. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. That's what came through as I was talking right now, because I didn't exactly know what I was going to say, but maybe as I was talking, that's just something I noticed. So yeah, if anybody's got something to piggyback off that, I'd love to hear what your experience is with that. All spoken.
I think that's an interesting thought, right, about the different generations and ages. And I think it's what's the comparison? I don't know that I like this comparison, but it's coming in, so I'm going to use it. I remember I used to I was a teacher with in a public school, and I would sometimes spend so much energy trying to get through to the students who are struggling, who are acting out, whatever it is, that the students who were like ready to learn and like could have used more of my attention, I was like, oh well, they're fine, they're doing what they're supposed to, and I had to learn how to shift that, where it's like, again, even loving boundaries or like being clear with expectations, but then I'm not giving you all of my attention because these students deserve it too, and they're more ready. And the reason I say I don't like that example is because in this case they're all children, so it's like we're it's very different than working with like adult generation and children. But it taking the portion of it about like where we're spending our energy, I think there's something to like, if you have people in an older generation who you have relationship with and there's like an investment, I definitely think it's worth the attempt to like have the conversations, even if you're not like winning them, quote unquote, there's not shifting, like having them. And also, I've found that like trying to at least not exhaust myself trying to fight an uphill battle with people versus the people who are like, there's an openness. Same thing with anything. Like, I want to work with people who are at least open to something versus like, this is like combative as adults, and then focusing on children and the youth, because at some point, there's going to be a passing of that generation and like our generation, and thankfully those who come after us are going to be coming up and like trying to instill, and this is what came up the last council, like the focus on children and our youth. And like, yes, what can we do in the first one? We talk about what can we do as women, what can men do, what can we all do? But there's been an ongoing theme of like young people, because it's easier in a sense to try to start in what's the word, teaching and ingraining these different mindsets where they're not even combating it, they're just like, what do you, it's just like not there. And there's so many children, if you think about it, like I love when children, they'll just say stuff like, they're like, that's wrong, that's right. Like there's less of a filter, assuming they have not been brought up in a household where there's like punishment, whatever it is, it's like safe to speak. And I remember even, and this gets a little bit into uh like race and cultural stuff and how we view things, but a lot of the population I was teaching was Black and Hispanic students. And there was something I noticed where there's sometimes this, and this is for sure a stereotype that I'm speaking to because it is a stereotype, of this idea of, for example, some of the girls were like super outspoken, which was sometimes challenging in the classroom as a teacher because they would just be saying stuff and you're like, whoa. But there's something I really learned to appreciate where it's like, wow, you are not afraid to say what's happened. Like you're not afraid to call out. You're not afraid to speak and use your voice. Yeah. Ooh. And yeah, maybe there's a little bit of conversation around how you're using it, not instigating fights. Like there's like some fine tuning, but there's something to teaching young people and encouraging young people to speak up in a way that's beneficial, and teaching them some of these skills, like what we're talking about, like when do you need to be sharp and like boundary and like that is not okay, stop, and when is it like you speak up, but like how can we approach it where you're not inviting a fight, you're not escalating things, because also for your safety, other people's safety. But I do think, looping back around to what I was saying, kind of tangented there a bit, I do think there's like the leaving space to have these conversations with everyone that we can, and being very purposeful with where we're really investing our energy and time, and allowing some of it to not be like this whack-a-mole game. Like we've got to let some of the things that are like painful or that like need to be changed, there has to be some letting of that happen, because we can't possibly address like literally all the things in the world. So like where can we make the most change, I guess, in a sense. That's what my thought is.
I mean, I feel like that's a perfect segue into rites of passage, honestly, because that feels like really the training grounds of like the reason why there's the dirty old man situation is because they haven't gone through the proper training that creates reverence and respect on the level that we're calling for. So just to start that conversation, like I would be interested to know, you kind of touched on it for a moment, Megan, of like what are the current rites of passage ceremonies, whether they're being called rites of passage or not. Maybe there's some that are good things that are happening, some that are not so good, like college hazing, like whatever, however that is, like that's kind of a rites of passage, but in a more negative sense. Or what are the positive ones, and what are the different stages of life that we feel are worth to celebrate, and create that rites of passage, and not just worth it, but like important that we do, just to consider, like, first and foremost, like what's the landscape that we're existing within, and then in time to continue to build on top of that.
Yeah, I really love that. I'm going to take it to my own personal experience. That's the best way I could go with my girls. And then I can also just piggyback on where, like, pull back with when I was a kid, like what things that I went through that maybe I needed more support within, but felt like a really big deal. So I always just take it to like the beginning of my kiddo's life. And I feel like the first time she really saw me break down was a huge rite of passage for her, when she saw me as like a human. So that was about 4 years old. And I think that's what happens when they really see your big emotion, and they notice it, because they're not so in need of you. And so that was a big deal. And I remember that was when she started to be part of a community. So around 4 years old, it's like when you start to put them into things, right? Whether it be like dance, or if they're like in soccer, or maybe they I don't know. Kids do all kinds of things. They could just be going to the playground more often. Suddenly they're in a community of people. So I feel like that's a big deal. And I do remember that the way that I constantly was honoring that with her is that I was always just reminding her that we are separate. As connected as we are two different beings. So my feelings and her feelings are not always going to coincide, and that my feelings are not her responsibility. So I think that's a big deal with girls and boys. I don't care who it is. Kids need to know that their responsibility is not to the person that they're around, and to hold their emotions. That feels like a huge deal. And I never understood that as a child ever. And that actually really, really hindered me growing up. I always thought that it was my job to hold everybody, and to hold the room, and to read everybody's feelings, and to try to do something to make things better. So I think right at the jump, it's just explaining to kiddos that like they're going to have the big emotions, and we're going to have the big emotions, and it's okay for yours to be different than mine, and you don't have to make mine better. You, of course, can love me and do things to love me, but you don't have to do things to make mine better. That's a big deal for all kids. Because think about if we had a world of people who knew that you don't got to do something for somebody else. Like you don't, it's not that you have to do something, but you don't have to carry everybody's weight. And you don't have to, you don't have to read between the lines to try to fix it. That's a big one. I do think that right around 7, 8 years old with kids, this is just scientifically based, right? Your karma starts to repeat. So you've created all that karma in your life, and now suddenly you're repeating that karma. So when my daughter turned 8 years old, it was the first big camping trip we ever went on. We went into nature, and this is just what naturally happened. I'm now repeating these things with my second daughter, but I didn't know that I was doing that. Life teaches you these lessons, right? So we went into nature, and I explained to her that she was probably going to start seeing patterns in her life, that patterns were important, and that you find patterns in nature. And that Mama Nature will always be like her guiding light, and that you don't really have to, it doesn't have to be confusing. Like it's simple. It's so simple that no book will tell you what Nature tells you. And so we just have continued that. Like when we are in really big patterning moments, like where we see things repeating, loops, spirals, in either, for any of us, as me and my girls and my husband at this point, because he's just so supportive. But we go to Mama Nature. That's just what we do. And we spend more time there. And we stop, close off the things that make it feel heavy. Now, my daughter is just 9 right now, and what we've now taken on is the relationship she's having with other girls, boys, those bigger conversations. Girls and boys deciding they're going to date, which is so wild at 9 years old, but that happens in her communities. Girls having, competitive nature, and her kind of wanting to impress the older girls. So now we're having conversations about individuality and how important it is to be an individual, and getting her into things that show her what makes her an individual and then what she can do collectively as an individual. So how can I take my individuality, my creativity, and make that my focus rather than making these other people's opinions of my individuality my main focus and trying to drive me. So yeah, we started that by starting a circle with my other girlfriend who has 3 little girls. And they're all younger than Credence, but I feel like I had like a little bit of a template. And so we'll see how we continue on. This is just my current reality with my current children, where she's at. But I would love to see it move into being able to continue to talk about these big themes with other girls around, something that they do together. So it actually is like the cool thing to do. That's where I think we have to like get it to be like, I want it to be like so cool that they're like, why does everybody not, if everybody's not doing it, like I want them to be like, no, you should be doing this. And that when they start their moon, like they start their moon cycle, I want them to be able to tell each other and it to be like whoa, I started this thing and it's crazy and I'm not feeling all that great, or it's really weird, but like my mom's always given her blood to the earth. So like we get to do that together and I'm excited, and celebrate it, make it a party, and not make it confusing. So yeah, that's just kind of my current thing and what I'm doing in my current life with my daughters. And I'm very passionate about it right now. And I'm happy that I have a place to share it. I have spoken.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Megan. That was so beautiful, celebrating you, and like so excited to see the person that your daughter grows into, because the guidance that you're giving her is truly so like precious, and something that I wish I had for myself, that my mom was like aware of this. I mean, she did what she could, obviously, but yeah, this is definitely like beautiful, so beautiful, and I'm like so happy to hear about this. And while you were speaking, it reminded me of this like thing that I learned from indigenous cultures to like bring in their wisdom here. One of my teachers that I study with, he was sharing that one of the rites of passages that the children that go through in those, you know, cultures go through is that both boys and girls, they attend, like, they create a whole ceremony for them. The whole community comes, and in the witness of everybody with their parents and like the whole people, they basically, like, I don't know if give up is the right word, but they recognize that their parents are just individuals and that they're true, or I don't know if that's the right word either, but like they like renounce their mom and dad and then claim the heavenly father and then the earthly mother as like their guiding forces, and then really acknowledging like and like respecting and honoring, like, these are my parents, they brought me into the world, and yet they're also individuals, they're human beings with their flaws. And then so they kind of bring in the heavenly father and the earth mother to be like the parents, like the great mother and the great father, and then like inviting them into the mix formally. And I think that's so important. Like, ceremony is like one of the most important things that we can do, especially because this isn't something that my teacher also says, is like, he always says ceremony is how we know, is how we signal to the ancient brain, like the reptilian brain, that it's safe to change, that it's safe to like transition and like really like step into the higher mind, is through the act of ceremony. So yeah, I think that like, and then like another aspect of ceremony that I think is really important is like the witnessing, because you can be in ceremony like with yourself and like obviously like have your witness be the divine or like a plant or whatever, um but it's so powerful when it's human beings witnessing each other in this like ceremonial manner. um so which is why I love like everything like the ceremony culture does, is like the altars and like the coming together, and like, you know, um something that I also learned from him was like, when you step into ceremony, like signal to your brain that you're stepping into ceremony by like dressing in ceremonial like garments or makeup or like things like that. In the modern world, I mean, the only ceremonies that we have is like a wedding ceremony or like a graduation ceremony, and those things are so like pruned of like the true magic and the presence that ceremony like requires. Like, everyone in the wedding ceremony, everyone's just stressed out because like the itinerary is like full, and like the bride is just like running around, and it's like exhausting. You know what I mean? But ceremony should be the opposite of that. It should be like slow, present, like intentional. So it's really interesting how like we've taken the concept of ceremony and like changed it in a way that it's like, I don't know, it loses its juice. Um, so yeah, I wanted to bring that in the conversation. I've spoken.
Yeah, I got my ritual shirt on today. This is very appropriate. Yeah, I feel that. I love what you said, the quote that ceremony triggers our ancient mind, that it's okay to change. It feels, all the lights just like glitched right at that moment. I mean, for me, that's like the missing piece of being able to have this consistency of ceremony. And in our studies with the Andean teachers that we've been walking with for many years, they talk about these different calendars. So there's the lunar calendar, the solar calendar, the astrological calendar, and the agricultural calendar. And those are, I'm going to be actually doing a class that goes deeper into this later this month, or I think it's early July, with Inheritance for members, called the Kairos Synchronios, which is Kairos is linear time, Chronos is magical time, and it's the synchronistic meeting of the two. And those four calendars are really amazing, like informants of ceremony. And now you're even making me think of like human biology, right? Because there's like our lunar calendar of what the moon is doing, but then each one of our menstruations has its own cycle. and those phases, those times in our life of puberty and marriage and graduation and death, and like these moments that are deserving of ceremony. And I'm thinking about like how to do that, how to create ceremonies, and even that one I love. It's fascinating. It's like edgy, but the one of like denouncing your parents and taking on the divine parents. But I'm even wondering is like maybe there's like a some version of that that we can even kind of like play with of, it's almost like it's like a rites of passage. I mean, Elizabeth was just present for this past year and a half with the Phoenix Plan, and we just did initiation. And it wasn't, I mean, it was the marker was having gone through a year of study together, and I wonder if there's something that we can do as a kind of collective ritual to be like, summer solstice, for example, like summer solstice is coming up. Maybe there's a summer solstice inheritance ritual, little like something simple and doable that we could all do together as a community to be like, I'm attuning to this group intention with the summer solstice to celebrate in this way. So yeah, just kind of thinking about ways that we can like feed that fireplace, like feed that intention of creating more ceremony in our life. And I'm curious what that might include. I kind of want to do a divination board reading for it. Maybe I'll put that on the calendar. Yeah, that'd be cool. Mhm. And like what? Okay, so then my last question, we're just gonna do like a couple more minutes. Whoever wants to close us down, of just like foreshadowing. Like let's go back to this 100-year prayer and fast forward to how we started last week. Like if it was 100 years from now, and war and rape were eliminated from the face of the earth, and one of the ways that we did that was through incorporating rites of passage and initiation. Who wants to like paint a picture with your words of what that could look like, you know, and how that is a part of culture? Just let us imagine it for a moment. Someone can bring and kind of like tell us a story just for like a couple minutes. Like, what is the story of that future snapshot where rites of passage is part of our common culture?
Here, I'll start it and then we can like popcorn it. My first thing I saw was spaces that thrive in communion. And what I mean by that is that everyone works together using their strengths and knows each other's strengths. So there isn't a need for dominance. The idea of dominance falls away because we recognize that each person within that space has a place there, and there's no weird energy when someone comes and shines in what it is they're good at. All there is, all the children that have now grown, that are now adults and are now running this, beautiful planet, and not even running, stewarding this beautiful planet, are seeing each other so clearly that they know their place, and they also are okay taking their place while someone else does the same, knows their place and takes their place. There's no stress about, am I going to hurt someone, or there's communication, and there's honesty, and there's creativity. But the dominance falls away. There's no need to dominate the space, control the space. One person does all the things in the space. That isn't necessary, because everyone is very aware that it's better together and we are better together. So that's what I see as what this does. It creates a lot of great individuals that know who they are and know that they can trust the guidance they're being given in their heart and actually follow through, and that they're not going to hurt anyone by doing that. That's my little part. Somebody keep going.
Oh, thank you
I'll
for
go
starting
to
that off.
that.
I love that. Oh, go ahead, Bindi.
Okay, I'll jump in, and I definitely want to hear what you have to say. But absolutely yes to that. And then I also see like this like migration happening between like human consciousness, I guess you could say, where everything just seems so like beautiful like over there. And it seems so like enticing, like where that energy is like collecting and happening. And it's like this vortex where like people are flocking to because it's beautiful and people feel good there and they feel uplifted. And then the ones that are still in war consciousness, still in extractive consciousness, they're able to like tune in and be like, actually, like, I don't feel good being in this. And that's over there seems like really nice and fun and nice to like be a part of. So I feel like it's like this, it's the beauty way, right? Yes, making it irresistible, like literally like calling it and then like creating this vortex that is not a way that like we're like fighting, but we're pulling, we're magnetizing it. Um, and like we're asking people to like rise and like if you want this you can have it, you're here, you're invited, and like come be a part of it. Don't be in the corner, like we don't want you in the corner anyways, you don't want to be in the corner anyways, it's not fun over there, it's dusty. So come and like be in the flowers, be in the joy. So I see that as that came to me as well.
Mm, yes. Yeah, yes, to all of this. I think a through line that's coming through is definitely again, the community, which is also a beautiful way to bridge, like not just for children. It's like the multi-generational, everyone has their place, and our focus is children and passing that on, but it leaves space for it to be this community, this multi-generational space. And I do think that we talk about that a lot, Roxy, with like the like making it irresistible, being like that looks way better, why don't we just do that, versus like you should stop doing that. It's like instead of fighting against what is, which like I always say I'm so grateful for the people who are doing that, who are fighting against what is, and we need those people. And it's very intense and I'm grateful. And we also need the people who are creating what's coming in, what is to come. So we have something to move towards, not just fight against. Um, and I do think, kind of going off what you were saying, both of you, Megan and Bindi, the idea of having children feel like they have their place, like they're not just like young waiting to grow up, that they're wise, they're like they are beings just like us and they have their wisdom that we can learn from, and they're not just like this lesser than being at the moment, and I think some of that comes to, I'll share it in maybe our chat or when we put together resources, but there's um a couple women who started these gatherings that are centered on children, where they're like having them be in council, like they're leading the council. There's obviously adults helping, but it's like asking them questions and like getting their answers. And it's like, we are looking to you for answers and like what comes through for them. And like, I think giving them positions of power in that sense, where like there's a community where and then we give them that space where like we trust you, we want to hear what you're saying. And then also in terms of finding what you were saying, Megan, about them finding their place and their role, kind of comes back to, I think, what I've said before about teaching them skills, not just, I mean, of course, reading, writing, all the things, but like teaching them skills, going back to a time where like they learn how to, like, they can at a certain age, and this could also tie in with initiations, they get an axe for their whatever birthday and they're taught how to use it, and that it can be a weapon or a tool. And it's like a responsibility, teaching them different skills, letting them be entrepreneurs. Like, okay, you want this, like, how are you going to make, let's have a business plan, like teaching them things where there's like a purpose. That's a whole track there. And then the other, like, not random, very related but slightly different, pathway is I think around emotions, which again we touched on earlier, is I think the space of we have ceremonies, we have like skills, we have counselors for them, and then there's also like a big focus on like emotional wellness, like how to interact with emotions. Something that came up randomly before is the ability to like apologize and be forgiven. That's random and also not random, but that came in before in terms of like how do you feel emotions, but be responsible about your emotions. But like if they get out of hand, how do you apologize and repair? Just emotions in general, I think is a definite like area of like focus. Yeah, there's so much more. I'm gonna wind it down because I want to respect our time, but every time I have these, I'm just like buzzing with so many do 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 do.
Yeah, I
It's so good.
mean, um, this is why we're gonna have consistency, is just to like keep letting all that is percolating come through. And yeah, I mean, hearing you speak, Elizabeth, it's just like really presence to me into the depth of the cultural reweaving of like bringing these things in, like, okay, yes, war and rape are like very extreme examples, but literally that piece of just like I like saw the whole situation play out of someone being like, oh, I'm sorry for that, and the other person being like, oh, I forgive you. And just like it's so simple, but like that's where peace starts, right? And so thank you for that final little cherry on top from all three of you and for being present today. And I'm going to wrap up the recording for now. And we'll be back here same time, same place. And then if you want to stay on for a little integration, then that's all good.